Welcome, everyone. This is the Ashland Planning Board meeting for June 24th, 2021. We have a few items on the agenda tonight. I believe 2 public hearings which are going to be continued and one that we will be addressing. But before we get to that, Emma, do you need to go through the usual how to access us routine?
Yes, I would be happy to. So if you're watching at home and my screen just went black. Okay, if you're watching at home and you'd like to join us virtually, there we go. All this information is on the ashlandmass.com webpage on the planning board agenda, but you can also go to zoom.us and enter the meeting IDs 865-1264-6250 and the passcode 541553. You can also join us by phone by dialing 1-646-876-9923 and again entering that same meeting ID and passcode.
All right. And on that note, we'll call the meeting officially to order at 7:17. And the first item on the agenda is the public hearing for 0 Magunko Street. Peter, you have some info on that?
Yeah, so, excuse me. So this public hearing, I know we've been continuing this, and we've been trying to deal with it, and I've been trying to talk to the applicant's attorney to kind of get a site plan, not a site plan in, but some renderings of the building that would be acceptable to move this forward. I have not received that information. So I've gotten a few things that I've got, and I've been continuing to push for better information, as the board over the last couple of months has requested that the office do. So at this point, I feel like I feel like I've broken record when I talk about it, but I am going to move forward and write a letter and send it via certified mail, requesting that we receive additional information regarding renderings until a time appropriate. Then we'll put them back on the agenda. And that's what I think that's the next step in this process. And please, Chair, if you want to jump in, Trish, and kind of talk about this a little bit. But I believe that's the appropriate step to move forward to.
Yes, just for a bit of, still fairly recent history, we found that in the past year or two, since I've been on the board, that often we seem to be going into meetings with partial information, things that we requested that didn't come through, and really felt that it became a waste of the board's time, as well as Peter and Emma's time, WACA's time, to discuss projects that didn't fulfill the requirements in order to officially making on the agenda. So we've gotten much more diligent about that people, applicants need to meet the requirements, or they need to have the meeting continued, because it's just, we can't discuss these issues without full information. Mm-hmm. So that's why Peter's been chasing this down, and why he's recommending the continuance, because we don't have the things that are typically asked for at these kind of meetings.
Mm-hmm. And once we do get acceptable renderings, I'm happy to repost this, and re-notify abutters. But obviously we've been kicking this can down the road on this application for, I would say, 3 months now. So, and I've gotten bits and pieces, not to say I haven't got anything, but we really haven't got a formal package that we were promised, obviously, at the get-go when we ran the public hearing notices in the newspaper. So at this point, I am going to move forward and write a authorization letter through the board, and/or a letter requesting additional information, and make record of it through certified mail.
That seems appropriate to me, but does anyone else on the board want to comment or have any questions regarding that?
I think it's good.
Okay, then Peter, I think then we need to have a motion to continue. Is that right?
Yeah, in doing so, I would make it for the first meeting in August. So it would give us a couple months, because at this point, our next 2 meetings are gonna be very busy, unlike this meeting here tonight. So I think we should, continue it out until the first meeting in August, which would be on August 12th. If we stick to our 2 meetings a month routine, and then go from there, I'd say.
Can anyone make that motion?
Yeah, I make a motion to continue the Zero Maganka Road project since we're waiting for information.
I'll second it.
Roll call vote.
Lakshmi Krishnan, I.
Deepa Venkatai.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
And Trisha Kendall, aye. That is 4, 0, and 1. Do we know if Joe's gonna be able to, has anyone heard from Joe, I guess, at this point?
No, I haven't. I apologize. I know I did not do my traditional phone calls to everybody today. I've been tied up and all. It's been a busy day.
I hear you.
Both at work and in the house. And so with that said, with the light agenda, I didn't make the phone. I didn't make the phone call. So, but no, I did not. I have not talked to Joe. And
I'm gonna send him a quick text
Okay.
to see it, ask him if he's coming on, in case he has forgotten or is occupied doing something.
Mhm.
Okay. So we'll see if he,
I'm checking my emails right now.
yeah, we'll see if he gets that, and we'll jump. It'd be nice if he can jump on for the last item, or but we still have a quorum, so we need to move forward. All right then. So second, well, technically third item on the agenda after calling the meeting to order is the 355 West Union Street site plan review. Is this was TJ's, is that right, Peter?
Yeah, that was TJ's again. They submitted one site plan. It was fairly casually drawn. I actually, I think Trish, I presented this plan to you not too long ago. After, you and I discussed that we wanted something a little bit more thorough, which showed the kind of the ingress and egress of the traffic and how the whole site would kind of work together, with the additional outdoor seating, which is being applied for. I haven't received a new updated site plan from the owner of TJ's. And so at this point, I think we should probably continue it out. Since our last meeting, the governor's ordered that the state has allowed outdoor seating to continue under Mass General Law. And kind of not an extension, almost I would say is a minor extension to the emergency order, even though the emergency order with COVID has been lifted. And so I think, they are looking to permanently permit the outdoor seating, the additional outdoor seating. And I know Ashland Ale House, I'm in conversations with them to do the same exact thing. But I feel very similar. I'm in a holding pattern until we get, additional information. I would say though, the owner, TJ's has been, John, has been very cooperative and understanding, and he will be, and I will follow up with him on where it is, to try to get an ETA.
So are you saying that by state order, restaurants can continue their current outdoor seating for a certain period of time, and whether or not we approve this, but what we're looking at really is about their permission to do something permanently, but that's not stopping them from having their outdoor space because the state is allowing it right now. Is that right?
Correct. So
Okay.
The state was allowing the outdoor seating, very similar to why we're meeting on Zoom tonight. Obviously that emergency lifted, and then 2 days later, I believe the legislature signed the bill and the governor signed the bill allowing outdoor seating to continue through, I'm going to call it the restaurant season. And I think, and obviously public bodies such as ourselves can continue meeting via Zoom. Emma, do you remember the date? I think it's April 22nd of 2021.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Don't quote.
22, but I think that sounded right.
Okay. So we can continue on, meet on Zoom. And so really, however, with all the discussions that were happening, restaurants such as TJ's Ashland Ale House that have invested a little bit, invested in outdoor seating areas. Yes, they're allowed to continue on through the summertime. So our site plan process is not slowing them down at all, but to continue on through next summer, they want this permitted. They are looking to get this permitted as a change to their regular pre-COVID business, I would say.
So we'd be looking to continue this till what date is available for?
I would just say 2 weeks, hoping that we do get an application, a revised site plan. And I can check in with them early next week or tomorrow to get an ETA on it. So I would just continue this one out until July 15th, I would say.
To July 15th.
Yeah.
Let me ask one more question. Is there, in the process of these continuances, is there a time limit or a number of continuances before the project has to reapply? What are the constraints or on that?
Yay and nay, I think the board can make a rule. I think we can kind of make a rule of thumb. I've never really run into anything regarding Mass General law, but I can say I think a good rule of thumb would be for me, is 4 continuances, from the date, or 3 or 4 continuances from the date of the scheduling of the first hearing. Then we can re-notify, and then kind of go from there. But I think, the last couple applications that we've seen, we get it going and we get that process, the lag time to get in front of the planning board with the postings and stuff is about 3 to 4 weeks. And so these applicants, anything missing, as we try to work with people, we try to get that process moving. However, I know, at least myself, we are starting to slow down and really review these applications. The 2 applications, well, I'll get into the administrative matters, but the 2 applications we'll be opening up next meeting on the 15th are professional applications done by developers, architects, engineers, and they're a little bit, I would say, mainstream than these outdoor seating applications.
Yeah, and I wasn't looking for us to come to any kind of conclusion tonight. I was just wondering what restrictions or timelines that we should be aware of, if any.
Yeah, so I always think of when they ask for a continuance, it's a stop clock, like in the game of chess, right? Once you make a move, you hit the clock, and the clock stops, because we all have that timing. The planning board has a certain amount of time to act on this or act on that. Obviously, all those time limits are really stopped when COVID hit. However, these clocks are running again because the emergency order has been lifted. However, just in a game of chess, a continuance happens and the board can, and that clock stops, I would say. That clock stops ticking.
Okay.
Christian, if I may, Peter, Trisha, I guess it's a question for all. Knowing that this outdoor seating scenario may come up and we may have more than one case in these situations, which is a very rare thing. Some things got, because of the pandemic, there was some infrastructure put in place for these outdoor seating. Do we know by any chance if there are kind of some possible changes to how the site plan review could change as we're looking at these? Because obviously there are some infrastructure in some situations they've already put in place, right? So when we say past April 22nd, if things have to change, do we really review the same site plan as we were prior to pandemic, or is it going to be a change that we could foresee coming as we're reviewing these situations?
I think, I'm sorry, Trish.
Well, my understanding is, and partly it's from discussions with you, Peter, that that there's the temporary thing that people are doing now with the outdoor seating, which is fine and acceptable. But these restaurants are applying, because it's a great business thing and we love them, right? The outdoor seating. But in order for it to become a permanent part of the business, it's going to have to, I assume, like, and this is a planning board, obviously, decision, go through the same process that a brand new restaurant applying for an outdoor seating area would need to go to. That not just because you had a temporary one during COVID doesn't mean it's good enough for it to have permanent status. So we may look, things like, snow placement, when it's not being used, parking, safety, ADA, accessibility, all of those things that that would be important for a brand new facility, I guess, putting in such a structure.
So doesn't, I think there was a talk about Mazi having a permanent outdoor seating place, right? Did we do it?
Yeah, I believe they, if I remember right, when the planning board looked at that project pre-COVID, that it does have a small outdoor eating area, but what they're doing now under the tents wasn't part of that. That was related to
okay.
COVID.
Okay.
Yeah, that wasn't part of it.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was just really a small patio space, if I'm remembering correctly, on that site plan.
Nope, 100%. That Trish, I think you and I just arrived at that application, and I think you were just part of the planning board, and because that was your blockbuster, and it had to go through site plan approval for a number of reasons. Number one, it was a change of use. It was from I'm going to say abandoned video store, obviously that, and then it was into a restaurant, and so it had to go through the full site plan process. And part of that process was permitting the outdoor space, outdoor eating space.
Okay.
And so with that, we looked at the ingress, the egress, the safety.
Okay.
How is alcohol?
Parking.
There's going to be doors or access points, safety from the fire department, safety from the police department, how cars are actually pulling up, and do cars actually pull in and
sound considerations.
Space. Yes, there's a lot with sound considerations with the residents up on Spyglass Hill. As a whole, we've gone into access into that site because obviously, there's going to be a new rotary there with the 126 project. But at the time, the 126 project hadn't started yet. So you do have to pull up Spyglass Hill Lane and come back down into that parking lot. So there was a lot when we looked at that. And so very similar, I would say.
Okay.
So with that in mind, and I'm just curious as far as TJ's is concerned, I'm very familiar with that parking lot because I ride a motorcycle and I spend quite a bit of time in that location. That parking lot is a mess as far as safety. I'm curious if the application as is has any mention of what the plan is as far as cleaning up that parking lot. Is that part of their proposal, if you will, if they're going to bring more people on site long term?
Yeah, that's part of their proposal.
Yeah, I think, and that's why it's been continued, because the sketch that was submitted to Peter is just not even close to something that we can discuss as a board, especially given these considerations that we need to look at. So it's one of those things like this just isn't enough for us to discuss. So sounds like Peter, they've been very cooperative and are going back to try to provide that information and those drawings. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. And also, please know, these site plan processes, obviously, with a Mazi, right? It's a new restaurant, it's a new business, and it's a fresh start, right? It's a little bit of a different situation. I think every town is juggling with these actions, and I've juggled with these in the past, right? Like, and actually, we don't have and it's actually just for discussion, not to elaborate, but in my past experience, in some bylaws, they have a site plan process and then they have a minor site plan process, right? And so if you're an existing business, right, and you're making an alteration to your existing business, you may only trigger a minor site plan, right? And then it's kind of like, okay, how does the planning board want to do this? They're an existing establishment. Do we need a full site plan? How deep are we going to go, right? So it's always that conversation is, for these existing businesses, how deep do we want to go into what's already going on the site, what's pre-existing, what's going to change, how does it act already? And so it's kind of, it's a real weight. It's a gray area, I would say, but just something to think about, I would say.
Yeah, but I agree with Anna that that parking lot in particular is rough, let's say, you know. So,
Yeah,
and
it's just the access to from the road to the parking lot is so wide and
yeah,
so it's very confusing sometimes.
yeah. So if and when it actually comes before us officially, then we'll have to look at all those things. You know, in terms of the things that we typically look at, you know, particularly, you know, from my point of view about safety, you know, especially about safety concerns, when it comes up, and obviously there'll be other issues as well. So,
Remind me, they have a liquor license, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this doesn't change anything to the existing deck they already have. You know, that was permitted already. That was a building permit that was done a long time ago.
I mean, I'm just glad the application is addressing the parking. I think if anything like that becomes permanent, you got to consider, you know, full year access potentially, depending on how they set up the outdoor space, if they are going to close it up and heat it or whatever they're going to do during the off season. It's a lot of people in that parking lot that is kind of problematic.
yeah, exactly. And that's why we wanted to make sure we have the proper documentation in place in order to really discuss it effectively, without just, yeah, kind of wasting the board's time. That we want to be able to discuss it realistically, I guess. So
100%.
Great.
Yeah. All right, so then I will entertain a motion to continue this until July 15th.
I make a motion to continue 355 West Union Street since we're waiting for a proper site plan.
All right, roll call vote. Oh, sorry, I need a second
I'll
on
second that.
that. Thank you. Roll call vote.
Lakshmi Krishnan, aye.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye. Sorry.
Deepa Venkatai.
And Trisha Kendall, aye. So that is a 4-0-1 vote that passes. I did get a text from Joe apologizing that he didn't text me earlier and that he actually cannot make it tonight. So, we will march on.
Okay.
Fourth item on the agenda is a continuation of the 123 Winter Street Scenic Road permit, continued from June 10th. Peter, what do I need to do to reopen this? Anything? Does it need to be reread, or
Nope.
we pick up where we left
We
off?
just pick up where we left off. Yep. So we just reopened the hearing. So for this one, I think as a follow-up, I think the board, you know, listed a number of questions that, you know, I want to look into. I actually visited the site again with our tree warden and DPW kind of contact Roy Carrera. We drove out to the site. Those are some of the pictures that I actually took, and I put in my my email to the board yesterday. I also had phone call with the property owner, and had a good talk with her. And I believe I got and I forwarded the board an email from the abutter that is actually present at the last meeting. So I think, you know, just kind of looking at that pine, where that big tall stump is, and I know the board kind of talked about it, is that, you know, looking at the site, talking to the applicant, talking to Roy from the DPW, he pretty much advised that the best thing for the town to do at this point would be to cut the stump at grade level, and then kind of go from there. I know we talked about grinding versus leaving the stump. From a safety standpoint, he said cutting it at ground level would be the best thing, obviously for motor vehicles. Regarding grinding, the town typically does not grind stumps and/or when we get into scenic road tree removal. And this has been I would say I would say the routine that the town has gotten into over the number of years. I would say with experience from other towns that I've worked in, the other towns have not grounded the stumps out either during a replanting process and or just in general due to cost, but also just, you know, work processes. So that kind of answers hopefully the questions about the stump and what else to do there. Regarding replanting, because I know that was a topic of conversation, you know, having that replanting a tree, you know, in that proximity, obviously the stump would be there, so that kind of would be a hindrance. Looking at the vegetation in that area, there's a couple shrubs that the homeowner currently maintains with bark mulch around it. And then she also did talk to me about the Japanese red maple tree that was planted a few years ago, which is very healthy. It's about 25 feet onto her property. It's on her property. There's no question mark about that. And so when I asked the homeowner if she would be either for or against the planting of a tree, she didn't give me she pretty much stated that she would not want to see a tree planted and replaced that would have the opportunity to grow to a height that may negatively affect the Japanese red maple that was planted 4 or 5 years ago, which is a healthy specimen tree at this point. So that was kind of where we kind of took that angle. And please stop me if you have any questions. And then kind of going a little bit further, I know we talked about more of the bylaw, and how is it enforced, looking at other communities, really it's up to the planning board, was there a violation? Was it out of harm? Was it out of, what was the purpose here? I don't think there was any malice. There was no kind of negative, there was just she received information from the town, from employees that do not work from the town anymore. And she was acting on the best information that she had regarding the trees. And then the last item I know, just to kind of talk about, would be the tree that has not been pruned and or limbed up. There was 3, I believe, oak trees on her property, on the property line. 2 out of the 3 trees were limbed or pruned, I would say. The last tree, the 3rd tree there was a couple dead branches that were visible that myself and the tree warden, Nora Carrera, could verify. And really, he just said it would be a proactive measure to kind of limb up that tree and cut out the dead limbs, but not going crazy and topping the tree, but just to kind of do a little proactive, pruning that would do no harm to the health of the tree at this point.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for Peter on this? Open up to conversation by the board. What our move is on this.
I mean, I've thought about this and I've read Peter's email very carefully, and I appreciate all the extra input. And the more I think about it, the more I see this as, the petition is being made by the town. It sounds like the town is responsible somewhat for this situation, right? That we're trying to remedy, where we're going to give her the benefit of a doubt that she spoke to somebody in the town and got the wrong information. And acted upon that. And hence we're looking at a petition from the town, not from her. She's not here. The town is. So I feel like it's not really appropriate for us to put blame on her. She's not even here, right? The town is. And with that in mind, I think in the spirit of doing the right thing, I'm kind of curious to hear from Peter and from Emma what we're doing as a town to make sure in the future we don't pass on the wrong information, because really it's on us to make sure that we honor this bylaw and that we don't make this mistake in the future as town employees, right? And that we don't put residents in a situation where the town has to file something on their behalf and we're having this conversation. So I'm sort of curious to hear about that, what we're going to do differently. And I certainly don't think we should be planting anything on her property, because it sounds like the town made the mistake here, not her. But I would very much be interested in having a conversation about whether we could take responsibility as a town and plant a tree elsewhere on the scenic route.
I think just to step in, I think, you know, going back to number one is how does the best information get out to the public? Number one, it's communication on the town side, right? And it's, you know, employees talking to each other, departments talking to each other, right? And I'm not going to speak for 5-6 years ago who the employees were at the time and what the conversation was. But I think number one is just communication. And I will tell you and tell everybody is, you know, I communicate, and Emma and I communicate fairly, you know, open conversations with the DPW, you know, Roy Carrera, Doug Small, Evan White. And I think it's something that's developing, right? You know, I still call myself new. I've been here 2 years. Evan and myself are new. Evan White is a new town engineer. And just to kind of as an example is how do you open up the lines of communication? You know, right now it's something that Emma and I have worked together on is we started a monthly construction meeting. The first Wednesday of every month, the planning office has organized a construction meeting where we sit down with all departments and we talk about issues that are coming up or what is coming up on the horizon, and we run through a list of projects, and we all kind of throw it out on the table, right? Air out any problems that we may have with a project, or just talk to each other about communication, right? So I think that's one of the number one things that we can do as a town, and we try to do that. But like any organization, and you know, probably, you know, it's definitely not perfect, but it's the best that we can do at this point, right? Regarding regarding education, I think is a follow-up from the last meeting. I think Emma and I are going to work together to do a PSA, right? And so we want to do a PSA and send that out and put that on Facebook. And I think it would be great is to do a PSA that obviously we would present to the planning board prior to, you know, sending it out and or posting it, but to send it out to all property owners along the 9, or I think there's 13 scenic ways in the town of Ashland, right? And it just explains to them what a scenic way is, right? Because it is, you know, as someone that hasn't dealt with what a scenic way is, and you know, how do you tell, you know, a boundary line? It's all new information. So I think those are those are the two things, right? Especially the PSA that we can kind of put up and put additional information on our website. Right now that we don't have that, we have okay information on our website, but it's about education, right? And I think that's some of the toughest, and that is the toughest hurdle that a planning office faces, right? Is how do you educate the public about these certain items, right? And they're not because of their planning, there's legislature and there's laws behind them. They can get fairly, I don't want to say cumbersome, but they can be a little bit confusing, right? And so and the other thing is, I'm always, you know, I'm in town hall, and I'm always happy to talk to people, right? And if anybody has any questions, you know, I get back to them, and you know, and I'm happy also to go out to someone's property and take a look at if there's a question about a tree on a property line, or what the best thing is to do. And like in this case specifically, you know, it was reported by, you know, a visitor of the Ashland Town Forest. They called Roy Carrera. Roy Carrera called me. I went out to the site and we talked about it. And it's just a communications thing, you know, I would say.
So the one thing that jumped out at me is, you know, she claimed that she talked to somebody, and we as a town have no record of it, right? We have no documentation as to how we advised her from 5 years ago or wherever. And that troubles me a little bit, that she had to act on a verbal communication about a bylaw, right, that requires coming to this board. And so I am a little curious if we can assure in the communication to the public that they should not be relying on verbal communication from the town on something like this. On a scenic route, they really do need to come to us. They cannot just call town hall and think that they spoke to someone who told them it was okay. I do think that needs to be in the communication somehow very clearly.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that, and I don't know all the I don't know the years and names. I would take a little bit of research, but prior to Peter and Emma coming on board, there was, I think, a little series of town planners in kind of quick succession. And so I'm not surprised at all that whoever the person who the homeowner, that they maybe got misinformation or directed to the wrong person, because there wasn't it wasn't stability, I would say, maybe at that time. That said, there could be, who knows what happens after Peter and Emma. We can have other periods of instability. And so how do we put something in place? Question about the scenic road. They're given this document that describes scenic roads, or and the policies. Like, how do we prevent, how do we make sure that process is in place after, if Peter and Emma aren't here, to be responsible for that. I think it's good to kind of think beyond, and us as well. Like, how do we think beyond ourselves and to establish policies that kind of help the town move forward, even when we're not serving anymore.
Yeah, and I think part of it is this partnership, right, between the staff who are here to advise us and the board. And I guess what I'm offering is Peter and Emma obviously are great communicators, but we don't know what the future holds in a few years, right? And so part of what I'm thinking about is, can we somehow include in training to staff in the planning office, future staff, a very clear kind of directive that when calls are made about this bylaw, or perhaps even other bylaws, that instruction is documented rather than just verbally shared. And it's tough because I know, Peter, you are relied upon by many in the town to sort of give input, right? And it's hard to figure out what needs to be documented and what doesn't. But I think this bylaw is so clear relative to, hey, you want to cut a tree on a scenic route, you need to come to the planning board. And I do wonder if on this particular bylaw that we're discussing today, we should be a lot more firmer on the town side, that, the town employees need to understand this cannot be verbal communication, interpreting whether a tree is ours or the owner's.
Yeah, I think in terms of town staff, I think we're looking at them as far as the planning department.
Right. But what I mean is future staff, right?
No,
because Peter and Emma certainly have a role to play in how future staff are trained, or various directive internal to the town that can be passed on to future staff.
Not to go into it too deeply, but we try to do that right now. We have the way we organize our digital files. Do we have files on every house, every property in the town of Ashland? I think Emma and I, yes, there was a succession of short-term planners in the town of Ashland. I think probably I would probably say I've probably, still calling myself a new planner, but I've probably been here longer than the previous 3 planners before me, right? So it's and I've Emma and I have, as a team has dealt with the cleanup of and I am still dealing with the cleanup of files, both paper and digital. And I think for this case, I think yes, I agree with you that the best approach to this would have been to write a letter and to put it in the file that would be created 123 Winter Street. So if anyone that came after me in the future would say, okay, is there a file on 123 Winter Street? They could click on it and find there was a letter drafted by whomever, myself or Emma, in the file on letterhead and signed. And it also could have been mailed to the homeowner that says, upon site visit, it was found by myself that the tree was on town property, and it could be as short as that. And then that's, clarification on what was done, but was that done in the past? Could that be done? No. Could that be done in the future? 110%, but it's a judgment call, I would say, for myself or Emma or any future person or anybody in town hall to say, okay, how many conversations do I have? I think from this standpoint, I agree with you. Is the tree on the property line? Is it off the property line? Yes, that's worth writing up, right? But as you say, there's a number of, there's a lot of questions I answer on about easements, right? is that going to take a letter? Because I had a conversation with somebody at 2 Main Street about an easement and what an easement is, or why there is a drainage easement on their property. I'm going to probably say that's not a letter, a conversation. A letter has to be drafted upon.
Right, and I think that's where it's tricky, right? And I don't want to spend too much time today on that, but I do feel like we need to think about that because that's what happened here, right? And we need to prevent that in the future. And the planning board is not in a position to give input, right, to residents as to, hey, is this my tree or the town tree? Peter and Emma are going to get that call. And although we can trust them to document, we don't know what the future holds. And I just don't want to find ourselves in the same situation where people are kind of getting the wrong information, because we don't want this to happen repeatedly on scenic routes, right?
No, I agree 100%. But I think the first step is, would be to let Emma and I work together in the next couple of weeks, months, to put a PSA together to say, hey, this is a scenic road. And I think that's the first step. It's update our website, about what a scenic way is, right? And how can one define a scenic way, and what does it mean if you live on a scenic way? So I think that can be done in the short term, and I think that's low hanging fruit that we can take care of.
Yeah, I agree with that education too, and not just a one-time thing, but I don't know, maybe every time there's a new scenic road, those notices go out again or something like that. Because given that we have a member of our own planning board that wasn't aware that that maybe the trees on her property fall under this, that definitely shows that a communication that we can catch right now and get that information out there. So.
And Peter, a question: does DPW or the tree warden go once a quarter and check on the scenic route to see if any trees need, I say, trimming, is hanging too much on the wires running?
I would say it's an annual process.
Oh, it's annual.
Yeah, it's an annual process, I would say. And it's also an annual process that Eversource or a power provider. Typically Eversource has an arborist on staff, right? And part of their job is to drive around all towns and to look for trees that are quote unquote hazards, right? That could fall on a power line, right? And so I say it's it's an annual task done by a tree warden and/or a power supply company, who are most often the applicants for these tree bylaws on these along scenic ways, to propose trimming and removal of trees. But I would say it's an annual task.
Yes. So I don't know whether the planning board has the power to say, or authority to say that instead of doing it annually, can we do it, say, twice a year or quarterly? Is that something we have the capacity to say, or it's outside our realm?
No, I think, we could do it biannually or annually. It depends, and it's one of those things. How often can I set it up with the tree warden?
Right.
How, what is the procedure? When I worked in Hanover, it was kind of an annual thing. Myself and the tree warden would drive around town, and he would show me, hey, I noticed this tree. What do you think? I got that tree. And we would take pictures, and then we would kind of go through the process. And it was an annual item, I would say.
Yeah, because I think in addition to the PSA, if residents see DPW or the tree warden coming up into their property once in a while to check up on the trees, that will also make them alert. Like if they can't do anything to those front trees, they have to ask somebody, right? Because they've seen people come onto their property to check up on those trees, right?
Okay.
So with all of this in mind, I'm curious what the rest of the folks in the planning board think about, clearly this lady is not the violator here. She's not even here. She's not the petitioner. But we're here as a town essentially seeking to remedy the situation that some town employee is responsible for. I'm not even sure we have the ability to do this, but in reading the bylaw, it seems like the town does have the authority to file these petitions. So the town seems to be a party, if you will, that in a way is responsible somewhat for this situation. So what are our thoughts on planting a tree somewhere else on the scenic route, and where could that go? Peter, do you have any ideas
Well,
from the tree?
the town forest is across the street, so I think, we have, plenty of options, but I think if we want to make it, part of a vote, I think we could say the town shall plant a tree, and I can work with the tree warden, Roy, to kind of, on a placement of a tree and where that would be most acceptable along Winter Street and or in the vicinity of Winter Street, I would say. So, I think that would be an acceptable measure. Do I know off the top of my head where
Yeah,
a
that's
tree
fine.
would go? No, I don't.
But you think logistically we could find a place for it without too many complications of other abutters, et cetera, wherever on the scenic route?
No, 100%. I think we can do that, and I can work with Roy, and we can kind of take the next steps, I would say.
Yeah, and I wonder, I mean, this I don't, not proposing that this be a part of the motion, but I'm wondering if, in this particular homeowner, it was not a good idea to plant another tree on her property in the right of way, because it does, as we discussed last time, that new tree is going to require care, and the DP is coming out to water it, right? So on the other hand, there may be other people along scenic routes. We don't know who they are, but there may be other people that would like a free tree in their yard planted. And I wonder if, as maybe part of the public service announcement, maybe we can, put something on there. If you would like a tree planted, we can put you on a list, or, whatever it is, so that when those opportunities come up, or when we know places that we can enhance our scenic roads with more trees, with homeowners that are already interested.
That'd be a great idea.
Like a carbon exchange, right? You release carbon in the air and someone else is going to take care of it.
Someone's going to plant it for you.
Yeah, the town accidentally cuts the tree, we'll grow it somewhere else. I think that's a great idea. I think it's a positive way to create some good energy around that, that educational opportunity, if you will. I wouldn't want to, wait too long for a response. I definitely think we can move along if we don't get too much interest, right? But
I don't think this is dependent on that. That's kind of for the future. In this one, I would say that we would be relying on the tree warden, the people that know these routes, in order to find that appropriate place. I would say probably on town property, not on private property, for the watering question. Someplace where a tree might easily thrive without a lot of care. And if that exists, then sure, let's put one in.
Sounds great. Do you want me to make a motion, Tricia, that would go to this tree, or do we want to deal with the trimming first and the stump before we talk about the extra tree?
I think, Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's all one motion about how to handle this. So there would be both about step one, that the existing stump is to be removed and cut at the ground level, or
at grade,
wherever it's worded there.
Yeah, I think just to jump in, I think, step one could be to remove the existing stump, to be removed by cutting at grade, for safety hazards.
Step two would be the limbing of the remaining tree with the guidance of
the tree warden.
And then step three would be finding a location for the planting of a new tree, ideally along that street or in a similar area. I think the PSA, is that part of a motion, or is that a goal of the planning board?
I think that's a goal of the planning board. I think that's something that we will try to look to do as a best practice,
Mhm.
so that's not part of a motion, but I think that's
Right.
something that we can work on. Myself and Emma and our sustainability manager Frank can kind of work on something.
Yeah, I think it'd be great to get Frank involved as well.
Yeah, no, and
Do we-
Frank's obviously connected with the
Mhm.
he staffs the sustainability committee, and they have a lot of momentum and energy in
Right.
town. And
Right.
so to pull them into it, I think would probably be a great avenue, I would say.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think the step 3, I'm a little confused about, just because Trisha, you used the language of finding a location. Do you mean to say that we actually have a motion to plant a tree or to just find a location?
Oh, no,
for it?
to find a appropriate location in which to plant a tree.
And to actually plant it, right? That would be,
Right, obviously this would be done by DPW or tree warden, whoever is, is in that um yeah, in that category. Otherwise we won't be sending the planning board out with shovels to plant the
I mean, I'm happy to make the motion. I think I wrote down the 3 steps. I can try.
Does anyone else, Lakshmi, Deepa, do you want any comments before Anna takes a crack at it?
No, I think that makes sense. All those make sense.
Okay,
I'm good.
all
as well.
yours,
Thank
Anna.
So I hereby make a motion relative to this particular property. Peter, can you remind me of the property address, please?
123 Winter Street.
123 Winter Street to 1, remove the existing stump, cutting it at grade level. 2 is the limbing of the remaining trees pursuant to the tree warden's advice and expertise. And the 3rd item is finding the location for a replacement tree on the scenic route, specifically that scenic route, right? And actually planting it.
Perfect.
So motion has been made. Is there a second?
I second that.
Any discussion before we take a vote? All right, roll call vote.
Lakshmi Krishnan, I.
Deepa Venkatai.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
And Trisha Kendall, aye. It passes 4-0-1. Is there a 1 at the end if no? Okay. It was just 4-0-0.
400. Yep.
Okay, sorry.
Joe's not part. Yeah, Joe's not part
Yep.
of it.
Sorry, learning the ropes here.
Okay.
All right, great. And then I think we should then add we're going to find a time to discuss those planning board goals. I think we're going to push that, probably not in summer, depending on people's vacation schedules, et cetera, where we can really get into an in-depth discussion without pressing on people in odd locations, say. But that should be added as our list to come up as that should reappear as something that planning board cares about in order for things to move more smoothly in the future.
And just to jump in, if someone has something or an idea pops in their mind, you can email me, and I'll try to keep a running list throughout the summertime, and then we can kind of circle back to it at a better time.
Are we gonna add that as an agenda item for next time? Do we want to brainstorm a little bit now, or how do you want to do that, Trisha?
I think I don't want to do it now. I'm kind of in I'm in Iowa in my mom's basement. And,
Could be added to an agenda for next time.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think on the 15th, we're actually looking at the new Minda school, which might take a good chunk of time.
We have two, just to jump in, we have 2 very big agenda items on the 15th. So it's going to be a big meeting, I would say.
I would say, why don't we add that to unless it's full already, why don't we at least set aside some amount of time, 20 minutes or something like that, on the last meeting in July,
Okay.
in order to kind of touch base about goals, throw some things out there. But meanwhile, as Peter suggested, I think we can individually shoot he and Emma some emails about our own personal ideas for goals. And then, as we talk about it as a committee, we'll really hash out the ones that we really want to work on, either whether they be low hanging fruit or whether it's going to take some deep digging. So, but it might be a several step process for us to get that list. So. All right. So, so Peter, will you be writing up the decision and then sending it out? Is that would be the process? Okay.
Yeah, so for the tree bylaw, typically it's a decision in the form of a memo. There's typically, there's no permit like a special permit, so there's no 20-day appeal period. But it'll be a decision, and that will kind of pull together, the application, and it will document, and I'll follow with the town clerk, and it will document, what has occurred, during this process, let's say.
So is it appropriate to send that out just for review before it goes? We'd be sending it out to the planning board for review for any corrections or before it?
Yeah, once I draft it, I'll send it out to everybody just for an extra set of, a few extra set of eyes to make sure I have it right. And then we can kind of go from there.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, no sweat.
All right, moving on to agenda item number 5, review and approval of minutes from three meetings. It looks like first we're looking at March 25th, going back a ways here.
Yeah, I think the March and the April one was just you had corrections right? And
I think that's right. I think at least on one of them, we were going to go back, and I think Emma was going to look at the tapes and kind of get it clear what was step by step, kind of what was discussed. So I think that's what we're seeing here. Sound right, Emma?
Yes, you guys had suggestions, and I think the main concerns were about the progression of kind of decision making for the downtown zoning. Linda, who writes the minutes, did do the edits, and I reviewed them afterwards. So anyway, happy to catch other edits if people just want to call them out as you see them or discuss.
So I reviewed all of them. I think I was only in one of them, and I have 0 changes to the ones that I was in. I don't think I can speak to the rest.
Right, and I think, and Deepa and Lakshmi can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the other two, which were about that kind of progressive discussion of the zoning, that it's clear now, like how the building
flows.
Yeah, that we talked about the building height, but then in the next meeting we reduced it, and yeah, that it became more clear. One question I have is the floor area ratio just says
2.0.
At the 2.0 was only at us on, I can't remember, it was only on one of the districts. The others, were they all 2.0 or was one of it 1.5? No?
Let me grab my bylaws.
I think where we left off that particular meeting was like, how does that 2.0 really work? And I think that's where we said we're going back to MAPC to find out a little more. So yeah, and that number stuck there because of that reason.
And I should know because I looked at those things a million times while presenting that presentation, but now I'm in Iowa and my mind is full.
I'm sorry, I have it right here.
Okay, thank you.
So, oh, you got it?
Yeah, so I can tell you that I believe subsection A was 2.0, subsection B was 2.0, and then subsection C was 1.5.
So in the bylaw that was passed at town meeting, B is also 1.5.
Okay.
Just to note. So do you want that fleshed out for the floor area ratio about the discussion around the 2.0 value in the minutes?
Yeah, I mean, I just think just listing it as 2.0 seems unclear. It's almost like the 2.0 could just be taken out, and it's like we're requesting a graphic. The 2.0 seems like we came to a decision about something, And that's the part just found unclear.
Yeah. Yeah, I can go back and flesh it out.
Okay.
Yeah, about that graphic and the discussion that happened around it.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think it wasn't something we dwelled on a lot.
Mhm.
It just, yeah. And I think the rest seemed pretty clear to me.
Definitely those notes have come a long way.
Yes.
It's much more
They
crisper.
flow very well.
So is this something we want to see again with the FAR, or are we comfortable approving them with clarity by Emma?
I think we're okay with.
Yeah, I think at minimum, we can just take out the 2.0 and just leave it that the board requested a graphic, or something like that. It would be fine with me. I don't remember if that's also on the March 25th. Yeah, I think it's on the March 25th too, that just says floor area ratio 2.0, and it doesn't say anything about it. So even if we put in there that the floor area ratios for the downtown range from 1.5 to 2.0, it means we're just noting it. And it's just not something we talked about it, but it wasn't the main focus of what we were doing. So.
Did we say in these meetings that we're going to start having attachments that talk about the content in these meeting minutes, so that if we have to ever go back, we know what we looked at? Was that something that we talked about? If I remember, Joe mentioned like we should have all the attachments with every meeting minute, so that if you have to refer, we have it right there.
Yeah, and I think that has been like at the documents section at the bottom. Like it mentions it, now I don't know which, I think I'm looking at the April one. So at the very bottom, it says number 3, downtown zoning dimensional comparison handout, so that would be a part of the official record.
Yeah, and so does the March one, right? March one has the same list on it too.
I assume so.
After adjournment, it's got.
Yeah. It's number 4 on the March one. So.
Oh, I did realize that was listed. It had okay, I see that. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, she doesn't have it. They weren't attached to the email, all these things, but they then become a part of it. Okay. All right, well, let's start with the March one. Entertain a motion to approve with corrections.
Am I supposed to vote on this if I was not there? Can't remember.
Question for Peter.
Yeah, no, it would just be that latch me deeper. And
Gotcha. Okay. So I'm out.
I second the motion.
All right. Roll call vote. Thank you.
Lakshmi Krishnan, 1. Lakshmi Krishnan, aye.
Deepa Venkat, aye.
And Trisha Kendall, aye. Passes 3-0-0. Oh, 3-0-1, maybe? She would be an abstain?
She would abstain, correct, because she's not part of it.
She was here, but abstain. Okay. All right, and then same for the April meeting minutes, motion to approve with corrections.
Second that.
I think you need to so move.
Oh, so snow move.
Deepa, it's up to you.
Deepa Venkat, aye.
No, I mean, are you
seconded?
Oh, I second that.
Okay. Roll call vote.
Lakshmi Krishnan, aye.
Deepa Venkat, aye.
And Trisha Kendall, aye for 3-0-1 approval. And then we'll move on to the last set. Which date? I can't remember.
That's May.
Okay. June 20. No.
It's May 27th.
May 27th. Okay. And this set is the one set I haven't looked at yet.
I think that's the first one I was at, right? I think.
Yeah. May 27th.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, anyone, I know Anna said she didn't spot
Yeah, I
any.
had no comments. I have.
Okay. Anything from you, Deepa? Are you good?
I'm good. I'm good.
All right, motion to, can I entertain a motion to approve the minutes as given?
I'll make a motion. Go ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna say, okay, motion moved is what I was gonna say. You can second that.
I'll second that.
Okay. All right, and a roll call vote, please.
Lakshmi Krishnan, aye.
Deepa Venkatai.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
And Trisha Kendall, I passes 4-0-0. All right, that's a lot of minutes. I don't have a printer here, so I'm madly going between screens. What do we have next on our agenda? Just reports?
Yeah.
Administrative managers, future meetings, public hearings, and reports.
So I can just kind of take the board just a couple seconds. So our next meetings are going to be on July 15th, which is the third Thursday of the month. We switched them due to a couple vacations and schedules in the summertime. The number one thing is we have two large applications. Number one is the Mendez School, which came in, and which Emma and I will be sending out the public hearing notice to the newspaper tomorrow. And then we will also be kind of sending out the abutters next week. And so that's a project that's been long in the pipeline at the school, Mendez School, for a complete overhaul of the site and for a new school. We will be putting those pictures, the diagrams, up online and all the information, I would say, in the coming days, if it already hasn't been done. Emma, have we been able to?
Nope, it's not online yet, but it will be, yeah, in the next few days.
Yeah, so it should be up online next few days. And with that, I have samples of the materials. I have really everything in the office. The second item is going to be the Village of the Americas. There's that last phase, which is some known as phase 3, some have known it as phase 7, some has it as phase 8, but it's the mixed use section facing Chestnut Street, which dates back to 2001. This application is being made by Baystone Development and Mr. Roy McDowell, who is behind the Legacy Farms project, has applied to develop 200 units, rental units, and I think 3,000 plus square feet of commercial. This project has been long in the process due to this mixed use zoning dates back to the first mixed use zone that actually was voted in a town meeting dates back to 1994. And I've actually today I pulled the town meeting articles for all those amendments, and also Emma and I have been working on gathering and we are creating a memo or a small report to give to the planning board, which will be first reviewed by town council on this project and kind of the history behind this project as a whole. And so that's where we're focusing, is to kind of help educate everybody, including ourselves, is what this project is, where it has its roots, and what legal documents have been signed and or executed by the town over the years, and then to kind of go from there. I do believe it would be probably the best bet to have town council at that planning board meeting as representing to help us kind of through this path as they kind of apply and or we open up that public hearing. And that's that. And that's pretty much the story, but I just want to kind of get everybody ready to, we will be sending out a lot of information in the next couple of weeks concerning that one project and kind of where it stands. I think everyone knows it's on Chestnut Street, a Village of the Americas. It's a Fafford development, which begins in probably the early 2000s, 2001, 2002 era. And the mixed use site in the front has always been, I would say, up for debate. In 2008, there was a very large zoning board of appeals application decision, which allowed Fafford, which stated that Fafford could build half of the mixed use that was proposed in the original site plan from 2006. And that's how you get to the concrete buildings that are there today, the concrete block buildings that you get to today. So this is a long and storied history project, and I will be getting that out to the board as soon as possible.
Does everyone here expect to be able to attend that meeting on July 15th?
Yes.
Okay. The Mendez project obviously is, you know, fairly recent history for all of us in Ashland, but the other one goes way before all of us, and there's going to be a lot of information, and however we can prepare ourselves for that. It's kind of two completely different hearings that we're looking at. And just so everyone on the board knows, full disclosure, for the Mendez school committee, for the Mendez building project, in those documents, when you look at them, you will probably see Paul Kendall. That is my husband. He is the chair of the Mendez Zone School Committee, and he is chair of the Mendez Building Committee for the new Mendez School. So it'll be a bit of a strange situation, but full disclosure there.
And July, we have only one meeting. It's only July 15th.
No, we're going to meet July 15th and July 29th.
Okay.
Yep. There'll be our 2 meetings in July.
It sounds like those are pretty heavy lifting kind of meetings with a lot of detail. And I personally am a huge fan of doing these meetings remote, but I am curious, Tricia and Peter and Emma, what your thoughts are. You know, when we get really technical and complex, is there a benefit to trying to do these meetings in person for those that are a little bit more heavy lifting and technical, and might help us to be together? Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I'm not, yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure Joe will be available in person. So I am looking forward to meeting in person.
And I'm not suggesting we require everyone to meet in person, but I kind of wonder if we might want to consider like a hybrid meeting where some of us are in person and others are remote. I don't know if that's even possible or allowed, but I can see some benefit to that. Or if it's more technical, involves a lot of information, et cetera. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not suggesting it for these 2 meetings. I'm just saying at some point it may be worth discussing.
Just to jump in, those discussions are being had at the Board of Selectmen level regarding in-person hybrid models. At this point, I don't believe we have the, you know, it's to my knowledge that we are still working on a plan to come up with that process. And so I agree with you. I look forward to meeting in person, but I think at this current time, staying hybrid would probably be the best bet. Regarding participation, you know, everyone on the same page, and if there, and I am putting and I will put myself out there more to help everybody understand what documents are and what is there and what's coming through the line. I agree with you, Anna, though. It would be, you know, having people in the same room, it could be a little bit better, but at this point with COVID, does everyone feel safe? Who's vaccinated, who's not vaccinated? It opens up Pandora's box a little bit. And so, but we are working as a town on a more hybrid model for larger meetings as time moves on together.
So Peter, again, just to review, over the 2 days, are you talking about Mendez is on the 15th and the Fafford project is on the 29th? Are you saying?
No, they're both on the same meeting. Yep.
So
I'm
they're
gonna-
both on the 15th and they're both on the 29th?
There is a possibility if we want to continue one to the 29th and continue one for another month out, we could do that.
Okay, so
Um,
we're kind of holding space, assuming,
Yeah.
okay,
And to tell you the truth, Trish, I think we need to say, okay, we're going to have a 3-hour meeting or a 2-hour meeting, and we're going to start at 7:15, and we're going to go, or you hear your application, we're going to give it back to you. And at, 8:15, we're going to move on, because, these both hearings are probably not going to be over in one night,
That's-
especially the
yeah.
Faffer property. And so
Right.
I think it's going to be a multiple hearings. And so to kind of stick to a time schedule would be of the utmost importance, I would say.
in terms of the Fafford project, I mean, the Mendez project is more straightforward to me because it's, it's obviously a complicated new building. I'm not saying
Mhm.
that, but it doesn't have the history that the other project has that predates all of us. Would it be possible or helpful, looking for everyone's input here, or appropriate to have a shorter meeting prior to the 15th where we can ask questions and go through the history of that project once we see the documents? You know what I mean? So that we're not asking all those questions. I know it would have to be an open meeting,
Mhm.
but that focuses just on the history. Is that appropriate, possible? Is anyone interested in
I
that?
think it's a
Yeah,
great
I'm
idea.
interested. I'm interested.
I think that's definitely a great idea. I'm a little concerned about two big topics in two meetings back to back, because we want to give both projects equal attention. I'm concerned, especially if we do them in the same order, like, item 1 is at the beginning of both meetings, and the public and us will tend to get less. I just find I have some concerns about that. I think that the more we address kind of the details, the better. So I agree with Trisha. I would like to see some pre-work in an open way.
So it's just like, is that possible, Peter? I mean, I know everyone's schedules might be a little obviously tight. It's really about understanding the history. It's really not about, from my point of view, not about debating what we're going to be talking about, but getting a clear understanding of the history, that we don't have to do that in the meeting.
Mhm. Let me, Trish, let me have a conversation with council,
Okay.
because
Yep.
I want to ask her from her opinion, does it make sense to open the public hearing and then continue it, and then maybe have like a special meeting on a Monday night, for history, where she could attend and the applicant could attend, right? And maybe we could say, okay, we're going to pick it off at a different point. Or does it make sense, because once we advertise that meeting, right, does it make sense? Does it say, okay, let's just let the applicant propose a project, we continue it, and then we're going to move on, right? So let me talk to her, and then I'll reach out to you.
We
Okay.
could also include the brainstorming in there too, right? Like the topics that we want to explore.
Yeah, potentially if we keep the meeting to I just want it to be like a reasonable length versus doubling up 2 evenings of our week or something like that. But I think even a half hour or 40 minutes on the Fafford project. I can't remember the name of the Fafford project.
Yep.
And then 20 minutes just to throw out some ideas, and we could keep it in an hour, just so that we have that knowledge as a starting point for all, so that we're all kind of on the same page as far as knowledge
Mhm.
when we start that meeting. That's kind of my goal. I feel like we could easily be lost in the history if we're all
Feels like
starting.
Sorry. It feels like the strategic plan event should probably get pushed, like you said, Trish, to the end of the month, because it feels like it's a very loaded time, and we already kind of scheduled the 2 meetings in July, looking at everybody's schedule, and now adding another session. Everybody obviously has to look at their schedule to see how that's going, and you don't want to we talked about a tree for 2 hours. one out today and last year. So I guess we need to give enough time. I think it's a great idea to do the strategic planning, but it feels like that needs to come a little if we have a loaded schedule for July.
Okay. I mean, I could see that too. I mean, I think if we can shoot some ideas about goals to
Yeah,
Peter, I mean, maybe they can even shoot those back to us in a bullet pointed list of just, that we can, I mean, it might spark more ideas if we just seeing someone else's ideas, just in a basic form.
absolutely. That's a great point. I think we should keep that conversation going and not wait till end July, but I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's let Peter talk to town council about a potential pre-meeting, open meeting about the history of that site so that we can go in more prepared. We will be sending goals to Peter and Emma, who maybe can put them into just a simple list and shoot it back to us, maybe in an ongoing way, periodically, so that we can all be kind of developing that list, thinking about what our own priorities are, so that when we set that with a good chunk of time at an actual meeting, we have something in front of us to look at. We've already prioritized some things for ourselves. So does that sound good? Okay. Hold on just a minute, Mark. Is there any other items in this category which I can't remember? Administrative matters, public hearings, reports.
I'm done.
Okay. Emma, are you good?
I think since the next two meetings do look like a pretty heavy lift, I thought this one is almost a little shorter. I thought I'd just let everyone know that in September, I'll be taking some maternity leave. So, I think the next few meetings are going to fly by and it's going to be here before we know it. So I wanted to give everyone the heads up, and I look forward to working with everyone through the summer.
Okay. Awesome. I just found out this news recently myself, and since
Congratulations.
Thank you. I know, yeah. It's easy to keep it a secret in the Zoom meetings. So
that is awesome.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Emma. We're very happy for you.
Thank you.
So, any other notes before I give the floor to Mark for a minute here on from any other board members about reports? Any other comments?
Good.
All right, Mark.
So do we have an idea when the next fall town meeting typically is, and how much time do we usually take to prepare for this? Because mine was a first time experience and it felt like we just have to plan a little bit ahead of time on topics that come up in these meetings.
I don't think at this point we're going to have anything coming up.
Okay.
At least not that we're working on at this time, as far as warrants. So we might just be able to put our feet up and let other people do the work.
I think we're going to have enough. I think these two projects that ahead of us, at least the Village of the Americas, will be enough for us to deal with. On a side note, we are as a community, we're going to start working as a follow-up to the housing production plan to start looking at inclusionary zoning bylaw. That's going to be that process is going to start probably after the 4th of July and into the summer. I don't think that we'll be ready. I think that's going to have to kind of find its way. So I don't want to kind of pinpoint the date on that. But
Yeah, that actually
we'll be plenty busy though.
Yeah, that actually is one thing that might come up, but it's not in the works yet. Yeah, it was just talked about. But okay. All right, Mark, on that note, if you want to unmute yourself, you can. You're still mute.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. I just want to jump back on the Village of Americas and the Mendez project coming up. If I can just suggest, and if you can be taken either way, then why don't each of our developers come in to see Peter and Emma and have them show the bullet points in the office and then tell them how to frame from there how long you have for a time limit. And basically, I've been veterans of these long meetings before, 3.5, 4 hour ones, that each one was supposed to be like an hour and a half most, and then take a break and get everything ready for the next one. This was when it was live. So I would maybe suggest doing that same thing, but it's gonna be virtual. Do that same thing and give and then have the developers come in first to the office, set up the bullet points, both projects, the Village Rag and Mendez, see where the talking points are going to be, and frame it up from there and keep it as one night, and just tell each one there's got to be no more than an hour 15, 20 minutes or so, and just set it up from there, and then be all set for the agenda. Thank you.
That's a great point, Mark. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion moved.
Seconded.
All right, roll call vote.
Lakshmi Krishnan, aye.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
And Trisha Kendall, aye. 400, that passes. And have a great
4th of July.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for the
there you go. Great 4th of July, everyone.
Thank